Hi everyone, I am so excited for today's video. I do this video every single year, of course with changes and tweaks for the current year based off trends, experiences, things that I've learned or changed over the past year to try to help all of you. And I gotta tell you, this is my favorite video to do every year. I started this channel with a passion to try to help others learn the craft of candle making and other related products, as well as starting and growing your candle business. It's been a passion of mine. It's a passion of my company. So I am extremely excited to be doing this video today. Starting a candle business in 2025, and a little teaser, that's exactly what I'll be doing, assuming I have time. Nevertheless, that's the focus of today's video, how to start a candle business and make it smarter, faster, and better. So strap in, this is gonna be a pretty long, comprehensive video. It is every single time, and I hope you all get a lot of value out of it. Let's highlight a few things that we're gonna cover today. Let's start with, what are you all going to learn? Well, in a nutshell, a comprehensive guide to starting and or running your candle business in 2025. Now, I've also already created a pretty detailed roadmap and timeline for many of the steps and topics we're going to cover today, but stick around to the very end of this video for a little bit more info on that. And as someone with a lot of experience, not just with my own candle business, but also in the industry as a whole, I'm going to provide you with some guidance along these different steps from start to finish, from idea to sales. All right, and I'm going to be moving around quite a bit today. Just mix it up a little bit. No one wants to see the same thing all the time, which probably includes my face, but sorry, you're stuck with that. Now, we're also going to be addressing common candle making concerns or candle business concerns, like, isn't the candle market too saturated? Or can I really even stand out? And even, does it cost too much to get started? And I hate to spoil it, but the answer to all of those is it just depends. But none of those should scare you, and we're going to talk about why. I'm also going to address common stumbling blocks that many people face when starting their candle business. Now, why does this particular video matter so much? Well, for starters, a lot of the information we're going to talk about today is information and tips and strategies that I've kind of curated over my years of experience when running a candle business. And those change year to year, just with change in the industry, change in information, change in resources, change in materials. But also a lot of the information and insights are tailored to 2025 trends, tools, resources, and opportunities. This is too hot. We're also going to discuss some shifts in consumer trends. For example, an increase in demand for unique, handmade, and niche-based products, and a growing popularity for self-care and home decor markets. The handmade and candle markets as a whole have an annualized growth rate of about 7 to 10% year after year. Now, I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people relate candle making to baking, and the reason is you're dealing with a lot of raw materials, ingredients that you mix together, blend together, and try to get a great result. And just like baking, it takes some experimenting and testing and some process to finally get that right recipe. But once you have the right recipe, it's a repeatable process and you can get the same great result every time. And they both also are a nice blend of science and art. Now, before we dive in too deep, let me introduce you real quickly to another resource that can help you with candles and running your business for sure, but also just for some other great skill sets. Baking, for example. You all know that I don't recommend any products or services that I don't use myself or that I don't think add a lot of value. So I'm very happy to give a great big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Craftsy is an incredible online community for makers, crafters, and other DIYers. It's a great place for inspiration, skill building, or learning new hobbies. Now, if you're spending a lot of time at home making candles and starting your candle business, you're probably also spending a lot of time at home cooking meals and baking. So you might as well improve a couple skills at the same time, which is exactly what I've been doing. I have cooked and baked more in the past year than I have my entire life combined, I think. And actually, the most recent class that I took was called Spicy Pork and Pineapple Skewers by Celeste Rogers. And look, I've always loved pineapple, always. But I've been on more of a, I guess you could say, pineapple kick lately. And who doesn't also love tacos? So I combined two of my favorites. This was a unique twist on traditional tacos, using simple ingredients you can find at your local grocery store. And man, it was so easy to follow, easy to learn, extremely tasty. I'll be making these pretty regularly, and I already have several more cooking classes just like this lined up as well. Candles, cooking, it's a great. At this point, honestly, I think I've mastered beef tips and sauteed mushrooms, which have now become two of my favorites. But listen, if cooking and baking isn't your thing, that's fine. There are so many other things that you can learn on Craftsy with over 2,000 classes across 20 categories. You'll find something to spark your curiosity, your interest, like baking or painting or photography or woodworking. There's so much more. Here's the best part. Each class is actually taught by award-winning instructors to help you step by step. So whether you are a beginner when it comes to baking or any other skill, or just looking to improve your current skill set, Craftsy got you covered. And as the sponsor of today's video, the first 1,000 people to click on the link in the description below or to scan this QR code you're seeing on the screen right now will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. That's hard to beat. So I've been talking to you about cooking and baking, but surely there's more than that, right? I mean, like, why are you here to listen to me talk about starting and running a candle business? After all, who the hell am I? Well, if you are new to the channel and you're new to Black Tie Barn, my name is Wade. I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. Now, Black Tie Barn started as a candle company and candle company only. We produced and sold candles under our own name. We also then eventually evolved into selling candles white label and private label. We did a lot of wholesale distribution as well, and we've run several different candle lines under the name. But over the years, my passion for helping others learn to do the same also kind of caught up with my passion for manufacturing products. So I started this YouTube channel a few years ago, as well as some other resources, to help other aspiring candle makers and business owners like yourself. And that's basically where we are today. Now, as far as my business in general, I think we're approaching somewhere between 13 and 15 years. I can't tell you exactly because while I'm really good with numbers on a financial side, I'm really terrible with numbers when it comes to dates. But as I mentioned, we started off very small. We started as just a small candle business doing local craft shows. Then we eventually turned to wholesale, private label, white label, an e-commerce shop, and so on. But over the years, Black Tie Barn has eventually evolved into not just one branch, but several branches. I think we're up to 12 or 13 different branches of the company now, including candles and other product sales, an educational platform, and candle making supplies, fragrance oils, wicks, and so on. I know a lot about the production side, making candles and other related products, but I also know a lot about the business side, the marketing side, the promotional side, basically how to start a business from ground up and how to grow it and scale it to fit your needs or the market's needs. It all depends on how far you want to take your business. You can keep it small. You can keep it manageable. You can keep it a part-time side income, and that's totally fine. You can keep it a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. But whether you want to keep it a hobby, start a small business, or grow it into a larger one, I'm here to help. This channel's here to help. Black Tie Barn in general is there to help. If you haven't been to the website before, it's blacktiebarn.com. You can check out what we have as far as supplies, educational content. We are adding more all the time. I'm also working on a few other resources that will be up in 2025. As a small business owner myself, I've gone through all the same struggles and challenges that all of you have or will at some point. And that can be testing candles, testing wicks, where to find materials, how to control your cost, how to promote your products, how to sell your products, dealing with shipping. There are so many things that seem overwhelming, almost too much for someone new to handle. But one thing I can promise you, assure you, is if you take things slowly, a step at a time, and use resources like this channel and others to help you, to guide you, you can save a lot of that time. You can save a lot of that frustration. You can learn from others' mistakes and hopefully help you prevent them. That being said, there's nothing wrong with mistakes. There's no better way to learn than to make mistakes. So I'd encourage you not to be overwhelmed, not to stress, well, a little bit, but not to get overly frustrated. And just understand, in the famous words of the Joker, it's all part of the plan. So just stick with it, persevere, learn as much as you can, and get your feet wet. There is no substitute for experience. However, I will give you as much information and help as I can along the way. Let's go ahead and dive into the details because we've got a lot to cover. But if you don't want to miss out on any other future videos that we release, as well as the whole collection of 300 videos I think we have now, 200 some, make sure you subscribe to the channel below. It's free, of course, and that way you'll get suggested videos a little bit more often. And if you enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate you giving it a thumbs up below. All right, whew, I'm already out of breath. We haven't barely even started. Well, the first thing we need to do is establish a few foundational fundamentals. That seems a little redundant. We need to establish a foundation, and that is why to start a candle business now, the mindset you should have, and your goals. Let's start with why start a candle business in 2025? Well, the short answer is consumer demand. Candles are part of the booming self-care, relaxation, and home decor markets. People have found a way to include candles in their own self-care practices. It doesn't even have to be scented candles. It can be any type of candles and related products. There's something soothing about that little flickering flame and the nice aromas that go with it. But it's also part of a home decor boom. Interior and home decorating, they've created candles as part of their staple. It's part of their home. They pick out candles that fit their decor, that fit their vibe, different vessel types, shapes, sizes, colors. Everything is all about how can this fit into my aesthetic. Did you know that 8 out of 10 homes are burning candles on a regular basis? That's pretty incredible. Now, why should you in particular help become part of this and provide that demand to those consumers? Well, for one, it's a flexible market to get into. It's got a low barrier to entry, which makes it possible for anyone, literally anyone, to get into candle making and start becoming part of this industry. Like I said earlier, it all depends on how much you want to be involved and how you want to scale this. Maybe you just want to do this as a hobby. Maybe you just want to make enough for families' gifts. Maybe you just want to do small shows locally. But you can take it much further if you want. Like I said, self-care, home decor, or gifting, candles aren't going anywhere, the demand for candles is not going anywhere, and you can have a piece of the pie. And remember, you can scale gradually, and you can do this part-time or full-time. It can be a side income. There's so many ways that you can include candle making and a candle business into your life, and that's one of the big reasons you should take that chance. It's flexible. So you're probably like, I hear you, there's a demand and I have flexibility, I can do it, but I don't know that I can. Like, I don't know if I've got it in me. I don't know if I want to take the time. I don't know enough about the industry. I don't know enough about business and so on. Look, here's the thing. We can all make excuses and rationalizations for why not to do something all the time. That's easy. Make the tougher choice. Take a risk. Don't have any regrets and think, well, how can I rationalize taking this chance? Why should I not give it a shot? So, what other mindsets are important when it comes to this industry? Well, in particular, if you're looking to do this as a business, you need to treat it like a business, not just a hobby. It starts as a hobby. The craft of candle making is a hobby. It's fun. But to take this to a business level, you have to treat it like a business. That means dedicated time, daily and weekly. Track your progress, set milestones. Treat it like a job, just happens to be a job that you love doing. I think the hardest thing that most people struggle with early on is balancing the creativity side, the candle making side, with the business responsibilities. You've got to do both to be a business owner, especially early on. You're going to wear so many hats. You will be the CEO of your business. In other words, the chief everything officer. You're going to do it all. But as your business grows, you'll get more and more help. You can delegate different tasks, you can delegate different roles, and you will find yourself focusing on just certain aspects of your business, and you have your hands involved in a little bit of everything, but you'll have the time, the flexibility to focus on what matters the most in your business and let other people fill in the gaps. It's also important to have realistic expectations. For example, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a hobby that you can turn into a business. And any good business takes some time, and it takes effort, and it takes work, and it takes experience, and it takes learning and constantly adapting and growing. That's how you run a successful business. It's not going to flip a switch and everything just magically works. You're going to have to learn some things as you go. It could be resources like this YouTube channel or other videos. It can be resources like Craftsy or talking to your local business office. There's going to be things you got to learn. But that's part of the fun of it. If you're anything like me, you're going to love that. You're going to see that as a challenge, as an opportunity, not just to grow a business, but to grow yourself. But you've got to be realistic. Sales are not going to happen overnight, but eventually you'll get sales every day and overnight. You also have to be realistic about your startup cost. There will be some. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you have to have some funds dedicated to the side just for this business. And how much you need will change over time. Early on, you're going to start by spending a little bit of money just to get your feet wet. Buy candle making kits, test various waxes and oils and wicks just to try to get a feel for it. Is it something you enjoy? Is it something I can take seriously? All that is going to take a little bit of time and money. There's no way around it. Well, unless you just got a lot of friends and family support that want to buy you things for Christmas or, buy you gift cards from places like Black Tie Barn or whatever. But other than that, it's going to take a little bit of time and money. And it's also extremely important to understand not just your costs, but pricing as your business grows. At the very beginning, it's going to cost you a lot more to make your products than it will a couple years down the road. Why? Because you're a smaller business. You're buying things in small quantities. You're not buying in bulk. So your cost to produce a single candle is going to be higher than it would for me to produce that same candle. That's normal. That's just how it works. That's why it's important not to compare yourself to other businesses. You're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to zebras, and that just doesn't make any sense. It's great to use others for inspiration, but don't try to benchmark yourself against them. Now, as your business scales and grows, you're going to buy your materials, your oils, your wax, your wicks in larger quantities, in bulk. Your costs will come significantly down, which means either your prices can come down or your profit can go way up, but usually it's some combination of both, and you meet somewhere in the middle. Your costs come down, your prices come down some, your profit margin goes up, you sell more, your gross profit goes up, your net margins go up. Everything usually improves from a pricing perspective as your business grows. And again, the timeline for success, you have to be reasonable about it. Your first sale might take days, weeks, months. That's okay. That is normal. You keep working, you keep promoting yourself, you keep building things up, and eventually you build some momentum. You start getting traffic. You start getting eyes on your products. You start getting repeat customers. Those sales continue to accumulate. And that's eventually how you reach a point where you have consistent daily sales. Last thing regarding timeline is that, look, it's great to have big goals. It's okay to shoot for the moon, but you still got a plan to get off your own street first. So create milestones. Make small goals that you can attack first. Get your first sale. Get to a certain amount of sales per month. And eventually you just keep going and going and going until you reach your ultimate goal. Dream big, plan small. Now, before we move on, let's talk about a couple mindset pitfalls that many people encounter. One is imposter syndrome. And we just touched on this a little bit when it comes to pricing and the cost to make your products. But to expand on that a little bit, it's important to believe in the value of your own product. You're going to see so many examples of other fantastic products out there. If you're part of my Facebook group, for example, and you just do any kind of Google searches for candles and small candle businesses and so on, or just walk through your local store, you're going to find so many great products. Be careful not to compare your products to those. That's imposter syndrome, and it's going to make you always feel like you're not doing enough, you're not good enough. You need to carve out your own spot in the market. That's what a niche or a niche is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's important to have goals and have inspiration, but don't feel like you have to imitate or keep up with someone else. And then lastly, the biggest pitfall for new candle makers when it comes to their mindset, without a doubt, is perfectionism. And I can tell you, I suffered from this for a long time, and it still grabs me by the ankles a lot and tries to drag me down. Having a goal or a target of perfection, it's great. It makes you work hard. It means you care about your business. It means you care about quality. It means you care about what you're doing. You've got to eventually become comfortable with good enough. Because when it comes to products like candles and any other arts and crafts, there is no perfect. There is no perfection. You'll drive yourself mad trying to chase it. What you should be doing is looking how to make a great quality product and one that is repeatable. That's how you create a business. That's how you scale a business. You will drive yourself mad and quit candle making in 3 months if you're trying to go for perfection. In this craft, there are so many variables. There's different types and size of wicks. They can all be placed in a jar, just a tiny bit different from one another. The amount of fragrance you use in different batches might vary by a gram or two. All the raw materials themselves, like the waxes, the oils, the wicks, they all have different batches. And there's a little bit of variance in batch to batch. They might not all be the exact same. And that's okay, because it's all within an acceptable range of variance, and you can make great quality, fantastic, consistent products across the board all the time. But you can't look for perfection, because what is perfection anyways when it comes to a handcrafted product? I mean, keep in mind too that the way a candle burns and the fragrance that it gives off, or the type of scent that you use for your candles, it's very subjective anyways. One customer might like a scent better than another customer. One customer's favorite might be another customer's least favorite. Where a candle burns in your house is going to have different performance, right? So there's so many subjective variables when it comes to this art, to this industry, that there is no such thing as perfection. There just isn't. And the quicker you can learn that and accept that, the less stress you will feel, the more motivated you will feel to keep going. Before we move on to the candle making basics done right, let's address one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to these fundamentals, this foundation. And that is making sure you have some business goals in place. And there should be basically 2 goal types: your short-term goals that we talked a little bit about earlier, and your long-term vision. Think back to the analogy of shooting for the moon, but taking small steps to get there. It is important to create that long-term vision. And the sooner you can figure out what that vision is for you, the better. It will change over time. It will evolve. It will adapt, and that's totally fine. That's actually one of the best ways for businesses to survive and continue to last for years and years and years is to be willing to adapt and change a little bit. But you should still have an overall value or a mission or a vision for your business. For example, do you only want to be an e-commerce shop? Or do you only want to do craft shows? Are you marketing your products towards a very specific targeted customer base or audience? Do you want to do this long-term as a full business and career? Or do you want to just do this as a little bit on the side as a hobby or for some extra additional income? Do you want this to be a family business? Do you plan to only do this yourself? Do you want to eventually have a partner? How large do you want to scale this? Do you want to only ever sell candles, or do you want to include other products eventually down the road? In fact, my most recent video, I'll link that in the description below. Check that out if you're interested in talking about other product mixes in your business. These are all longer term visions that you want to have for your business. Do you have a mission that you want to have behind your business? For example, a lot of businesses start because they want to give back to a certain nonprofit or a charity. What drives you to do this business and make that part of your mission and your overall vision? But equally, if not more important, are all these short-term goals, not just to fulfill your vision down the road, but to make sure your business is sustainable enough to make it that far. You've got to be able to eventually earn a profit. You don't have to right away, but that should be one of your goals. So your short-term goals might be, in 3 months, I want to launch my first product. 2 weeks after that, I want to have my first sale. A month after that, I want to be trying to do 3 sales a day. Maybe 3 months after that, I want to have another milestone of selling on another platform. Maybe I start on Etsy and then I want to start a Shopify site. Or maybe you want to do 1 craft show a month, things like that. Those are your short-term goals. And just like running a marathon or doing a diet, every time you hit one of these checkpoints or milestones, you get more motivation. You feel a little bit more inspired to continue. So we've been talking a lot about the business side of things and how to kind of get going, the right mindset, right? Let's talk about some of the actual art of candle making and some of those basics that you need to have to get started. Well, not to oversimplify it, because there's a lot of other things that can be included, but every candle, at least container candle, has 4 main parts. You've got your jar, you've got your wax, you got your wick, and usually you've got your fragrance. And those are the main components you need to think about when you're working on testing candles and designing your candle lines. So we're going to start with wax. Now, there are several different types of waxes on the market. Not just several different types of waxes in general, but also so many wax blends that exist. Many more now than there used to ever be when I first got started. I would say the top 3 main wax types out there are paraffin, soy, and coconut. And then there's an absurd amount of blends of all of those kind of mixed together. And I'm not going to get into the details of all of these in this particular video because I have several videos on this topic already, and I'll try to remember to link a few in the video description below. But I would encourage you to do a little research on your own and decide what type of wax you want. Now, be careful. There's a lot of conflicting information out there when it comes to wax types. I'll just tell you this, there are pros and cons to all of them. All of them. Some are a little bit better at throwing fragrance in general, like your paraffin waxes or your parasoy blends. And some might just appear to be a little bit more marketable because of their name. For example, coconut and soy waxes tend to appeal to a lot of customers as well, just because of the type of wax. They seem to be more natural or organic. Some waxes cost less, some cost more, some are easier to use in general, some are more difficult to use, some are really easy to wick properly, and others are very difficult to wick properly. I've got a few videos on some of the waxes that I prefer over others, but again, last time I'll say it, I know I sound like a broken record. I would encourage you to test several waxes when you first get started. Do your research, grab a few sample packs of different kinds of wax, just see which one you like, which one you gravitate to the most. I think honestly, most of you are probably going to start with a soy or a parasoy blend, but don't be afraid to try several and figure out what you like the best. In summary, when it comes to wax, look, the purpose of the wax is to be fuel to the flame for the wick and to hold your fragrance if you're making scented candles. It is going to make up the majority of your candle, in most cases somewhere around 90% of your candle. Next up, making a very small percentage of your candle, but a very, very important part of it, is the wick itself. The wick, when it's lit, that flame is what melts the top of your wax and creates a melt pool. And that is what releases the fragrance into the air. That's why you smell a candle. Now, that's not 100% true because all candles have what's called a cold throw and a hot throw. You'll see this abbreviated all the time as CT or HT, cold throw and hot throw. The cold throw is the smell that a candle gives off when it's not lit. It's just how it smells when you walk by or when you take the lid off and smell it. That's your cold throw. The hot throw, which is what ultimately most customers are going to care about, is what the candle smells like and how strong the scent is when it's burning. Another way of thinking of cold throw and hot throw is Cold throw is what sells the candle off the shelf. Hot throw is what keeps the customers coming back. The wick burning is what creates that melt pool. And that's what the hot throw, that's where the hot throw comes from. Solid wax melts, it becomes a liquid, and it's easier for the fragrance to escape as the candle's burning. Now, for that flame to keep going, the wick needs fuel. And that's what the wax is. And that's why wax type matters, because all these different waxes are different types of fuel. And different types of fuel means you might need different wicks. Waxes being different types of fuel means that it pairs better with certain types of wicks. And this is where wick testing, which I've mentioned a couple of times so far, comes into play. You can't just stick any random wick into any random wax and expect to have good results, unless you're super freaking lucky. There are countless types of wicks out there, although I would say there's probably about 10 primary types of wicks. Premier 700, which we sell here at Black Tie Barn, which I use the majority in most of my candles. We also have CDN wicks, CD wicks, Eco, HTP, Zinc, LX, Hemp wicks, RRD, Square braid, wood wicks. Look, there are so many out there. And they all are designed to behave a little bit differently. Now, there are a lot of kind of wick guides out there and places you can kind of shortcut some of your testing to begin with, because there's a lot of information on what wick types tend to work best with certain wax types. So I would encourage you joining our Facebook group if you're not already. It's in the description below. It's called the Black Tie Barn Makers Group. I also run another group called the Candle Making Work Group. Both of those, you're going to find plenty of help out there about, let's say you choose a wax. You'll get a lot of starting points for wick types that work well. A lot of waxes, several wick types work well, and a lot of wick types will work in several variety of waxes. But which ones work the best, you just need to test for yourself, because it also will depend on your jar, the jar size, the shape, and even the fragrance you're using. But generally speaking, most waxes have a preferred wick type or two. But then once you've decided on a wick type, there are various sizes. For example, in the Premier 700 series wicks that I was talking about earlier, there are 29 different sizes of those wicks. They start at Premier 700, and then they go to 705, 710, 15, 20, 25, and so on, all the way up to 799-8. 29 sizes. Why so many sizes? Well, different jars will need different wick sizes in order to generate a proper melt pool. A Premier 720 wick, for example, might work well in a 2-inch jar with a certain wax, but in a 4-inch jar, it's going to be drastically undersized. So in that case, you could go up several sizes in the wick, maybe to a 767 or 770, or you can use 2 small wicks. So long story short, you can see why there are different sizes. It's for different jars and different combinations of materials, right? And every wick series has sizes. Your CDN sizes are 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up to 28 or 30, I think. And your Eco series, 1, 2, 4, 8, they also go up. Generally speaking, very general rule of thumb, in most wick series, the higher number is a larger size. Now, what does a larger size mean? Most of the time, the wick is going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to be a slightly wider or taller flame and usually generate a little bit more heat. In other words, a larger wick will usually make a larger melt pool. However, big disclaimer, that is not always the case. I know that sounds confusing, but it's just a fact. So, like I tell everyone when it comes to wick testing, which is, by the way, the toughest part about candle making, nothing replaces testing and experience. I don't care what someone tells you. I don't care what kind of reference, wick guide or chart you find, whether it's on my website or any others. You've got to test a range of wicks and sizes for yourself to determine which ones work best for your specific product. I said this was an overview, but that was a pretty detailed description of wicking because it is such an important part of candle making, and I wanted to make sure you had enough good information to get started. So again, make sure you test several wick sizes when you're working on a new product, particularly if you're working with a new wax and a new jar. You want to test several sizes to figure out what works best. Use others to help you kind of get in the right ballpark, but you still got to test them yourself. Now, we here at Black Tie Barn sell sample packs of all of our wick series. So you can purchase a small amount of all the wick sizes for each type if you want, to have a sample pack to help your testing and sampling process, and saves you from having to invest in larger amounts of each size. I've got a couple other wick videos here on the channel I would encourage you to check out to go a little bit more in depth, and I will plan on making a new kind of updated one of those as well sometime in the next several months. But until then, check out one of the others. All right, let's move on to fragrances. Now, fragrances, as you've probably seen behind me in the background, are what gives your candle a scent. Now, this particular one is called a Bandit. Actually, ironically, I picked it up and it's one of our best sellers. And we we package ours into 1 pound, 8 ounce, 2 ounce samples, and then we're about to release our 5 pound jugs as well. Now, when it comes to fragrance oils, you have a plethora of options. And when I say you have hundreds of thousands of options, I mean you have hundreds of thousands of options. Many are classics, many are unique, many are bold, many are seasonal. There's just an endless supply of fragrance oil options out there. I would encourage you to have fun, check them out. This is the most fun part about candle making, is dealing with the fragrance oils. As Black Tie Barn, I've been a candle maker for a long time. I know what I've always looked for, both in types of fragrance oils, but also in quality. So if you are looking for fragrance oils, you're just getting started, or you already make candles and you want to try ours, go to blacktiebarn.com, check them out. We have a fantastic selection of fragrance oils. They are amazing. I promise you, they are awesome, and we're always adding more and more and more. But this is not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. We're just passionate about our products. All right, so fragrance. There's 2 major types of fragrance you can have for your candles: essential oils or fragrance oils. Generally speaking, you can use both in candle making. However, you're gonna have many less options when it comes to essential oils, and you have to be much more careful. You have to use essential oils in much smaller amounts. They're generally speaking not gonna be near as strong in your candles, and they're gonna cost you significantly more money. Candle making fragrance oils are actually made and designed to go in products like candles or soap and lotion and body oils and whatever else. And most of them you can use a much higher percentage in your products. They are also much more cost effective, and you have a lot more options. So it's up to you which route you want to go. The majority of candles on the market are made with fragrance oils for a variety of reasons. Personally speaking, I would recommend fragrance oils designed for candle making. Again, for a variety of reasons we don't really need to get into in this particular video, but that is the route I would encourage you to go. And that's the route we personally use in-house. Now, regardless of which way you want to go, there's a few things that matter no matter what. First is, using too much fragrance oil can actually impact the quality of the candle. Too much is a bad thing. It can cause performance issues. It can cause wicking issues. If nothing else, it's also just a waste of money. At some point, adding more oil doesn't lead to more fragrance. All it does is lead to more cost. Depending on the type of wax you use, different waxes hold different amounts of fragrance oil. They have a max limit of how much fragrance they can hold. Most waxes on the market these days hold anywhere from 6% up to 12%. There are exceptions on both sides. Majority of people and businesses making candles using somewhere between 8 and 10%. That's the averages. What I would encourage you as a new candle maker to do is probably start around 8 or 9% and adjust if you need to. But I would try to find your standard and stick with that, and only make adjustments if you have to. And when it comes to testing fragrance oils, there's also a couple things to keep in mind. Whether it's fragrance or essential oils, there's the smell out of the bottle. So if you take an oil, take off the cap, and smell like this, that's called the out of the bottle smell, or first impression. And that's great. That's a great way to determine, do I even like this fragrance at all? Like, am I even in the right ballpark? However, you're typically picking up the main primary top notes. All fragrance oils are made of top notes, middle notes, and base notes. So when you open a bottle of fragrance and smell, you're typically mostly smelling the top notes. You're not getting the whole picture. You're not getting how they all work together. And that's the purpose of putting oil into wax and making test candles, because it will often smell quite different when it's burning in a candle than off the shelf and out of the bottle. And that is one of the reasons we encourage people to not judge a fragrance strictly out of the bottle. Give it a shot in product as well. And again, it's also important because fragrance oils, even though they make up 8 to 10% of your product, still are quite expensive. You can pay anywhere from $15 to $70 a pound or so for fragrance oils. And so you still want to be smart on which ones you choose, and don't rush it and don't overcommit. Here at Black Tie Barn, we sell 2-ounce samples. Now, why 2 ounce? Because some places you'll get 1 ounce or even less. The problem with that is it's often not enough to make product. And if you're not getting enough to actually make product, you're not really doing yourself any favors. So we sell 2 ounces. That's enough to make a few products. And that's also cheap enough for you to determine if you like a fragrance or not. Does it work for you before you commit to a larger bottle? All right, and next up, we're gonna talk about the containers, or the jars if you're making a container candles. Now, there are other types of candles. Some people make dessert candles and they come in different kind of dishes and a variety of containers. Some people make votive candles, which are like small little pillar candles that sit in a dish or some other kind of holder. And then there's pillar candles that just stand alone. And again, they usually sit on some type of holder or plate or tray. And then there's taper candles. There's so many types of candles. But the majority of people making candles and running a candle business are making container candles, which are the candles that are in some type of jar or vessel. First of all, let's talk about some trends for 2025. Now, this changes periodically, but right now, people are mostly going for a contemporary, modern, or simplistic, minimalistic look because they want to fit it into their home decor. So they tend to care more about color than they do fancy designs and shapes. Now, years and years ago, you used to find all these crazy like frosted glass and shimmering, shiny, crazy looking candles that's just not really a thing anymore that you see very, very commonly. Now it's more like simple, sophisticated, clean, because it just looks nice in the house. And again, that's just the trend right now, and that might eventually shift again, but that's typically what you're seeing. Now, on that note, let's say you're looking for colored vessel because maybe you're looking for something red or something like a hunter green, right? For your home decor to fit in with your aesthetic. You've got two options. You can buy vessels that are that color already, or you can use clear glass, clear jars, and use candle dye in your wax. And that you can achieve any color you want. Now, I'll take you with me real quick and show you some of our candle dye selection. Now, we're a little short right now, but we have 22 different colors of dye. We sell blue, and we've got burgundies. We have maple. I don't know if you can see these. Cinnamon. We've got a cardinal red. We have 22 different dye options. We sell them in 4-ounce bottles, and we sell them in 1-ounce bottles. Now, 22 colors is already a pretty wide selection to choose from, but think of how many options and color variations you can get by mixing different colors together. We also sell a candle dye complete set, which is a 1-ounce bottle of all of them if you want at a discount. But anyways, I've always been passionate about colored candles. I think it's a lot of fun to come up with unique, creative colors, but also I just tend to find that people want a little bit of spice in their life. So even if you are looking for a simple, elegant candle, a lot of times you still want a splash of color. Now you can do that in the wax with dyes, or you can do that with the jar itself. But you don't have to, just know that that's an option. The number one thing that you should think about when it comes to choosing your container is safety. Safety first. Remember, you're making a product that has a flame in it. It's gonna get hot, and that's okay. That's normal. It's acceptable that the candle will get hot. If it doesn't get hot, it's not gonna work. What you don't want is to become so hot that the container can't handle it, and you end up scorching the surface that the jar is sitting on, or the glass is too thin, the glass cracks or breaks. So always make sure that you are purchasing jars that are okay to use for candle making. Now you might be wondering, how do I know? Well, most thick glass is going to be suitable for candle making. Mason jars, canning jars, both of those are suitable for candle making. But if you're looking for anything else outside of that kind of canning looking jar, then your best bet is to go to candle suppliers because they're selling jars that are meant to be used for candle making. That way you're not taking a risk on something you found at a thrift shop or something at a random dollar store. You just don't know. And beyond that, you can also test them yourself. Make your candles, do stress tests, keep an eye on them and see how they perform, see how they work. But my personal recommendation is to use candle suppliers to purchase your jars because that is the safest option. Now, even though this particular video is not going to go into the details of some of the supplies for the actual craft of candle making, I will link some resources below and have some other videos that will help with that aspect. However, I'd be remiss if I did not mention another product or tool that I think is an absolute must when it comes to starting your candle business. And those are wick clips and wick setting tools that help you be more efficient and productive when you're making your candles. Now, the ones that I personally use myself, have for years, and I recommend to everyone are the ones from Norden Candle Supply. And let me tell you a little bit about them. The reason I prefer these tools is they are custom fit to your jars. Now, when I say custom fit, that doesn't mean that you need to pick a jar, send it to them, have them custom design and custom fit one, and it takes like an extremely long amount of time to do that. They have already pre-fit, pre-designed for most of the jars already on the market. Chances are one of the jars or containers you're already using, if you go to their website, you select your supplier and the jar, they likely already have the tool designed to fit specifically for that. Why is that important? Well, the majority of wick setters and wick clips on the market are designed to be sort of a one-size-fits-all. In other words, they might have a few sizes, but they're designed to fit various size jars. And that sounds great in theory. The problem is they're not very precise, and so your wicks don't end up dead center, and you get a lot of variation and flex in where your wicks are actually placed in the jar. So you end up with inconsistent burning candles. So I much prefer ones that set the wick in the same spot every time for my jar. And they go even further by allowing you to personalize and customize your wick tools for your branding. For example, mine say Black Tie Barn. They can say whatever you want. And that's a really cool feature, as well as the fact that you can choose the color you want because they make these in-house. So they are a small family-owned business. They make excellent products that you can personalize with both color and your name to fit your branding. They don't just stop there. Since then, they have grown to offer several other products like a label guide tool. And this is a tool that allows you to consistently place your labels on your jars time and time again without so much fluctuation of where the label fits. Even more recently, they've rolled out personalized electric lighters, business cards that are made out of like a thin metal, which are so high quality. They're very luxe. They are amazing. And then even personalized candle tins as well. Now, you've probably been seeing some of the footage here of the various products that they offer, but I would really encourage you to go to their website and explore for yourself and see everything they have to offer. Again, I love to support small family-owned businesses, especially ones that offer fantastic products like Norton Candle Supply. All right, so we've talked about the materials that go into making your candle, but what about the process? Well, part of me wants to tell you that it's pretty straightforward, and in theory it is. You take those materials we just talked about, you put the wick in the jar, you mix your fragrance and wax together, and you pour it in the container. Simple enough. Oh God, if it was only that easy. All right, I don't want to burst your bubble here, but there is more to it than that. The reason is there's certain processes that change or vary from wax to wax, jar to jar, environment to environment. What do I mean? Well, temperature is the biggest thing. So as we already talked about, certain waxes can hold certain amounts of fragrance oil. So let's assume we've already figured that out. And once you've decided on what fragrance oil, then you test that with your wax to determine the right wick. Let's also assume you've already figured that part out. Well, now it's about a process of how to actually use your products together when you're mixing them and when you're pouring them. So different waxes have different melt points, meaning at what temperature that wax will turn from a solid to a liquid. Well, that's important because you have to mix your fragrance oil in when the wax is a liquid. So you first need to understand and learn the details about your wax type. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're using a wax that likes the fragrance oil mixed in around, let's say 170. Now, I should tell you, there's information out there that help you with these starting points. You don't have to just guess. When you purchase a wax, it's going to have a melt point listed. It's going to have recommended wicks usually listed. It's going to have recommended temperatures of what temperature to melt your wax to, and what temperature to add your fragrance oil, and what temperature to pour your wax into your jar. So you're not just doing all this blindly. You have some starting points. But as you will learn, the longer you make candles, those are just starting points, and it's going to vary from person to person. That's why if you ever go into a Facebook group, you'll see one candle maker recommending one thing and another recommending another thing, and then there's a fight, and it's like, it's hilarious, but there's reason for that. Environment matters too. Because if one candle maker is pouring their candles into their jar at 150 degrees, but they're in a 75 degree environment, maybe they're in Florida and it's extra humid. Or what if another candle maker is in Minnesota and it's cold and their room temperature is only 68? Well, the two temperature changes or variance is going to matter for how that candle sets up. Once you pour wax into a jar, it's going to cool and eventually harden. Well, the temperature around you is going to affect how quickly that happens. So that's why you're going to see mixed information, mixed suggestions all the time. And that's okay. That's why it's important to test for yourself to figure out your best process. And that's kind of the purpose of this part of the video. You're going to test a few different processes. Everything you do, you're going to test a few different versions. When you're testing wicks, you're going to test a couple different wick sizes. When you are testing waxes at the very beginning, you might test a few different waxes to see which ones you like. When you're testing making your first few batches in your specific environment, you might pour one candle at, say, 140 degrees, the other candle at 155, and another candle at 170. See which one turns out the best. That's how you know. And that is what frustrates a lot of candle makers is they'll go into groups or read something online that tells them at what temperature they should pour their candles. That doesn't apply. Unless that person made that video or wrote that blog in your house, that doesn't apply to you. So take all information, including from me, with a grain of salt until you can test it for yourself. Trust, but verify. Once you have experience, once you have practice, once you have information, take notes on all this stuff, by the way, and refer to it as you go. You will determine your own process, what works best for you, and you'll be on your way. That is the best way to do it. No matter what anyone tells you, the best way to do it is to test for yourself and figure out what works best. Now, speaking of what works best for you, there's ways to quote unquote perfect your product. Now, I use that term lightly because we said there's no perfection when it comes to candle making, and I wholeheartedly believe that. When I say perfecting your candle, what I mean is how to make the best candles you can make, right? And other than testing, you will keep tweaking. So you test, you learn, you tweak. That's what you do. You're going to tweak the amount of fragrance oil you use. Maybe you started at 9 and you realize, maybe I don't need that much. It's plenty strong on its own. Let's go down to 8%. You might realize in your wick testing that 2 sizes work really, really well. Which one's a little bit better? 2 benefits to that. One, you know which one works the best, but also you have a benefit of knowing a good backup one if 2 of them work really, really well. What if you have a hard time finding a certain wick later? You've got a plan B that you know still works well. You also just learn more about your product and how it behaves. And when it comes to perfecting your products, make sure you keep notes. Document your processes. I don't care if it's in a notebook. I don't care if it's in a Word doc or a Google sheet, whatever. Track everything you do for reference later, because you don't want to perfect something and 3 months later you come back to make that again. You're like, I have no idea what the hell I did. That's frustrating. Now, I'm not going to get into all the things that can go wrong with a candle. I've got several videos on the channel that specifically talk about each of those in different videos. But there are a couple things I want to mention real quickly because you're going to encounter them when you start making candles. And I want to just go ahead and get ahead of those. One is tunneling. Now, this can happen for a variety of reasons, but in general, what tunneling means is your candle is just kind of burning down the middle and you're just creating like a tunnel, a hole down the candle, and nothing on the side is melting. Usually, that happens because the wick is too small or the wrong type. The wick is not generating enough heat to melt the wax, which is not creating enough fuel to feed the flame, which is why it kind of dies out and just keeps burning down the middle. Most of the time, you just need a new wick type that is hotter or a larger wick size in the same series. If you encounter that issue, plenty of people in the groups will help you, but usually just additional testing, you'll figure that out on your own. Another one that a lot of people think is similar or the same thing, and that is sinkholes. Now, that can lead to tunneling, but it's not the same thing. Now, what are sinkholes? Sinkholes generally are where there are pockets of air underneath the surface of the wax that you don't always see. And what can happen is there's no wax there, there's no fuel. So as the candle burns down, if it hits one of those pockets or sinkholes, it can drown out the flame and it just stops burning. Now that can happen in a variety of waxes. You see that a lot in soy waxes, just because soy at a molecular level isn't very consistent. It's constantly kind of changing and it doesn't always cool at the same rate uniformly throughout the wax. And so what can happen is these little sinkholes can build up underneath and you don't necessarily know what happens. The best way to prevent that from happening is to make sure you're following the recommended guidelines for using your wax, but also stirring slowly. What usually causes these air pockets is bubbles or air getting trapped in, which I guess is the same thing, getting trapped in the wax. So stir slowly. If you're seeing a ton of bubbles as you're pouring, you're probably going to get some sinkholes. Stir slow, give it a second to settle down after you finish stirring. If you do get some bubbles, and pour it slowly. Prevent those air bubbles from turning into air pockets or sinkholes. Now, in addition, some waxes are just worse about sinkholes than others, or they sink as a whole, like the wax contracts as it cools and you get these dips in the center or dips around the wick. That's not a sinkhole, but it kind of has the same effect, and that makes your candle does not burn evenly or cleanly or even all the way down at all. And so there are various ways to deal with this. Stir slow, follow the recommendations, and test your pouring temperatures. Before I move on, let me explain real quickly what I mean by pouring temperatures. So as I mentioned, when you're heating up your wax and it turns to a liquid, the wax is hot. What do hot things do? They expand, right? So the wax is at its largest volume as it's melted, and then you pour it into the jar, still as a liquid. Well, as it cools and eventually turns back to a solid, and it's shrunk a little bit, it shrinks. That causes the wax to contract, and that's what causes some sinking and some dips and stuff. So certain waxes like to be poured hot. Other waxes like to be poured a little cool. But again, in your testing, find what temperature kind of minimizes the amount that wax shrinks or contracts. And that'll also prevent some of your issues and give you smoother tops. All right, we went a little bit in depth there for this video, but that's okay. One other thing I want to mention as sort of a common issue new candle makers find is what's called frosting. Now, frosting isn't actually frosting at all. What it does look like is kind of white discoloration or snowflake look effect, or like white chalk sometimes on the outside of your candle. You're usually going to find that in soy waxes, and it's just a property of soy waxes. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It's really, really hard, if not impossible, to control without using some type of additives. Now, you don't always see it, and sometimes it takes months to show up. And that's why most people tell you if you're using soy wax, just don't worry about it. Embrace it. And it's a characteristic of the wax you're using. Not all soy waxes do it really badly. Some do it more than others. Certain things can help you in the short run, but generally speaking, you can't always control it. Also, it doesn't affect the performance at all. It's just a visual effect. And if that doesn't bother you, or you can get used to it, it doesn't matter. And then the last one we're going to talk about is something called wet spots, which is such a funny name because it's nothing to do with being wet at all, but it kind of looks like a wet spot on the glass. And what this is, if you ever pick up a candle, one of yours or one at the store, and you see, if you turn the candle around on the clear glass and you see parts where it's like, it almost looks like it's wet or there's like a bubble or something, what that is separation from the jar. So as we just talked about, wax expands. So when you pour it in, it's expanding to the whole jar. And as it's cooling, it's shrinking, right? Well, part of the wax pulls away from the wall of the jar and it creates a separation and it kind of looks like it's wet. And so it got the name wet spots. Again, does not affect the performance of the candle, but it can be visually displeasing, mostly to candle makers. Candle customers generally don't care unless you are making like novelty or dessert candles where it can impact the look of your finished product, which in those type of candles, looks are everything, then you have to kind of work through that and figure out waxes that don't do that as much or change your process up a bit. But in your general day-to-day container candles, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It's something that you and I as candle makers only care about. No one else really does. So I want to tell you now as a new candle maker, it's going to happen to you. You're going to freak out. You're going to go run to the Facebook groups. It's going to drive you mad and you're going to do everything you can to fix it. And then you just can't. And here's the worst part about it. You'll get a bunch of tips and tricks on how to fix it. You'll do it. It'll look like it's fixed. And then it comes back a couple days later. You can't stop science from sciencing. Wax is going to continue to expand and contract as it changes temperatures. You might get it perfect in your house, but as soon as it goes in a package and shipped out in mail or goes to a shelf in a store, it's a different temperature. The wax is going to continue to change. There is not much you can do about it. Some waxes shrink more than others. Some are really good with jar adhesion, no wet spots. Some are horrible at it. Most are somewhere in the middle. Don't let it stop you. Don't let it freak you out. Just go with it. Honestly, it's not a big deal. And eventually you'll get used to it. And most candle makers will tell you, stop worrying about it. It's just something we care about and overthink. All right, so you've made your candles. You kind of want to sell your candles, but you have no idea what to price it, because you have no idea what it costs to make it. So let's talk about calculating the cost of your candles. Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure you're tracking every single dollar you spend on your business and on your raw materials. I would encourage you to have separate funds set aside for this. Have a separate checking account, everything. You want to be able to, first of all, never mix your personal with your business funds in general. That's just a good habit from an accounting perspective. But it also makes your life easier as the owner and operator of your business if you track all this stuff separate. You want to track every expense, every purchase you make for your materials. And you're going to basically average it out and figure out what it costs per unit. For example, let's say you buy a pound of fragrance oil and that pound costs you $25. Well, you're not using a whole pound in one of your candles. You're probably using, let's say, 1 ounce in one of your candles. Well, you divide there's 16 ounces in a pound. So you take your $25 1 pound bottle, divide it by 16, that's your cost per ounce. So now you know in your candle that has 1 ounce of fragrance, how much it costs for the fragrance oil in that candle. 1 wick, you're not going to buy 1 wick. You're going to buy 100 wicks at a time or 25 wicks at a time. Well, what's the cost of 1 wick for that candle? Same thing with a wax. You're going to buy wax in 10-pound slabs or a 60-pound case or a whole pallet eventually. Well, figure out what your cost per wax is per ounce or per gram. How many ounces or grams are in your candle times the cost per gram or ounce? Well, that's the cost of wax for that candle. Now, you can do this all yourself quite easily, just on a spreadsheet or a Google sheet. But there are also applications out there to use that will help you kind of manage your recipes and your costs for those recipes as well. One of the apps that I've used in the past for years and years was called Craftsy Base. I'll have that link in the description below. It's really good for new businesses and small and mid-sized businesses to track your recipes, the cost of your products. It takes a lot of time and effort to kind of design it and build it up to fit you first and input all your information, track your expenses, upload everything, right? And basically add your products. That's like that with most applications. Once it's set up, then you just manage it as you go. But that will help you determine your costs. And it'll even provide recommendations for like pricing, which is cool too. Again, several other applications will do the same thing, but that's one I'm very familiar with. So long story short, you're going to track every expense that goes into producing that product. Your wax, your jar, your wick, your fragrance, dye if you're using any color, and then labels, right? That's part of your finished product. So what does your label cost you? And some of these are estimates, but you need to know pretty accurately what it costs to make one product, because that's going to help you determine what to price it. Now, you don't just price your products based off the cost of your product. You'll see a lot of information out there that says, well, my product costs X, so to sell it wholesale, I need to times it by 2, and to sell it retail, times it by 4. You'll see that out there all the time, and it's fine. It's a good general concept, but business isn't made on pricing formulas, unfortunately. And there's a lot more that goes into it. Market research, comps. It's sort of like selling your house, right? Like, it's not just the materials that went into your house that determine how much you sell it for. It's also the area. It's also the market, right? So you have to understand more about your candle and who your customers are and the value you think your candle holds versus just the cost to make the candle. Maybe you are a luxury line and you're going for a certain customer base. Maybe you're using certain products, or there's something unique about your products that didn't cost more to make it, but it adds more value. Or maybe your brand is very niche based. And by that, I mean, you have a very specific theme or customer base that's meant for your candles. And because of that, you're not selling just general merchandise. You're selling to a very specific audience, and they'll often pay more because of that value, that additional value or perceived value. Nevertheless, it's important to know the detailed breakdown of the cost to make your candle, because you don't want to ever be underselling your product, right? You never want to lose money. You need to ensure you're making a profit, but you also need to know what your break-even cost is, but also how far you can come down on your pricing. For example, if you're running a sale or promotion, you've got to know that break-even point. You got to know your costs so that when you're running sales or promotions or whatever, that you're still protecting your margins, so to speak. And nothing else, you just need to know your numbers. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm losing my voice. I'm hungry. I need a nap. All right, so I'll be back shortly. This is going to be like a whole night for me, but it's going to be like 2 seconds for you all. And we're going to pick back up with talking about designing your products, your brand, picking a niche for your business. All right, everyone. All right, I am back. I had to take a nap, get a little bit of coffee. It's been a long day. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which is talking about picking your niche or niche and your target audience and why that's so important and the best way to go about it. So the first question is, why does picking a niche matter so much? In other words, why does picking a theme or focusing on your brand towards a specific customer base matter so much? Well, the easiest way to describe it is that picking a niche goes to solve a particular specific problem for a particular specific customer. It caters to unique needs. For example, if you're looking for good quality makeup, for example, you might go to a L'Oreal or a Sephora or something like that. Honestly, that's not my realm. I'm just throwing things out there. But point is you go to specific companies, specific brands for specific needs versus kind of general merchandisers, because you're typically going to get something that's a little bit better quality, or at least that's their primary focus. That's what they're known for. And companies that are known for something in particular are going to gravitate or going to pull certain customers towards them. Customers are going to gravitate towards them a little bit easier. It's a little bit more memorable. But that doesn't just apply to makeup or sportswear. It also applies to any retail product, for the most part. And that includes candles and soap and lotion and other home and bath products. Why? Because if you are known for selling a candle that is themed towards, movie themes, then you're going to attract those type of customers. If you design ones made for sports, you're going to attract those type of customers. If you design some based on mythology, you're going to attract a certain type of customer base that's looking for that product. Now, you can go any route you want. You don't have to necessarily narrow down so much that you lose a very large portion of the market, unless that's your goal. However, it is easier to sell to a smaller chunk of the market than it is to sell to the entire market. And that's why choosing a niche or a theme or a specific brand or customer base is ideal, especially for newer candle makers, because it's easier to stand out. It's easier to market, it's easier to promote, it's easier to find your customers. It's easier for certain customers to find you if you're selling a unique brand, a unique concept, a unique product. They can go buy a lilac candle anywhere. But whatever your value is, whatever your product proposition is, whatever your theme or brand is, they can only find that with you and maybe a select few others. So the idea is to stand out, to make yourself a little bit more unique and memorable, and to serve a need, to serve a value or desire, a want or a need, either way, to a specific customer base. And I've got a great video that talks about the difference between a niche or a niche and a theme, and how you can use either one or a combination of both. There is a difference between the two, and honestly, there's so many options when it comes to running a candle business that I'd rather just kind of point you in the direction of that video to give you some more inspiration rather than go into too much detail on this one. But my personal advice that I would give to any new aspiring candle business owner, including advice that I would give myself starting a new business, would be to pick a niche or a theme, something specific, something unique, because it's just so much easier to get started. It also makes packaging, presentation, branding, labels, boxes, everything, your social media ads and posts, it makes everything so much easier because you can tie everything together, right? You give everything a common connection rather than just selling kind of random general merchandise. A niche or theme doesn't have to be specific to like a topic. It doesn't have to be specific to, like mythology or superheroes or zombies or sports or farming, right? It can also be a class or a type of product. For example, a niche is also gift-ready candles. That's also a niche or a theme. So if your entire candle line is built around gift-ready products, meaning they're all bundles made for gifts, or they're all seasonal gifts, like candles made for Valentine's Day, candles made for Christmas, right? That's still a niche. That's still a theme. That's still a purpose and a position for your candle business. That's still going to reach a target customer audience. Now, in my personal opinion, I would still tie some type of theme to it, some type of concept to it to make it even more powerful, but that's one option. Eco-conscious candles, aromatherapy candles, those would be other examples of a way to separate yourself from others in the market. Now, those are still pretty generic, pretty general, so you're still going to have quite a bit of competition out in the market, but it's still not the same as just general merchandise. Well, how about some inspiration? I can give you some examples of ideas that are popular trends or niches for 2025. One would be nature-inspired scents. You've got things like cedarwood, and moss, and pine. Even rain-type fragrances are expected to be popular for 2025. And here at Black Tie Barn, among our fragrances, we have several that fit this theme very, very well. We have a rainwater and several other fragrances that kind of fit the ones we just talked about. Peculiar pine. Well, there's so many. I'll let you just check them out. Also, candles that have sort of a natural appearance or like earthy tones and colors would be a really good way to hit this market as well. Pastels, pastel greens, browns, terracottas, creams, ivories, those type of kind of neutral, earthy colors are expected to be pretty popular in 2025. Another thing that's gained a lot of popularity are these daring combinations of different scents and oils, like a leather and lavender together, or a tobacco and rose. And ironically, we have a couple that are very similar to those that we launched in 2024 among our fragrance oils. Let me give you a couple examples of ours that I think you should try out. And if you try those out, you might get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But we have one called Love After Death, which is a rose and frankincense. It's a little earthy, it's a little floral, it's a little smoky, all wrapped up into one. It's freaking awesome. Mixing woodsy with citrus, like a cedar and citrus note, would be another great combination. So these type of unique, bold, daring combinations could be your brand identity as well. You're not just like every other candle company where you're just selling every other type of scent. You're selling things that are unique and bold and memorable. And actually, that was part of the inspiration for our fragrances here at Black Tie Barn. Yeah, we have some classics. Yeah, we have some common ones that everyone likes that you just kind of sell all year long and just staples in the industry. But we have so many kind of daring, new, creative fragrances that are just bold and unique and memorable. And you can do the same thing with your candle company. Another popular niche that is gaining a little bit more traction every single year is luxury style candles. Now, what does luxury candles mean? Well, it usually means one of three things. It can be luxury ingredients, which means not necessarily that they're going to perform better, but they are luxury type ingredients like a coconut or apricot wax. Does that mean they're going to burn better, perform better than other waxes on the market? No, but they feel more luxury. Same thing with certain fragrance oils. A lot of fragrance oils vary in cost. Some feel more higher end and feel more luxury, even though they cost the same as others and don't really perform any better than others. But it's that feel. right? It's the vibe. It's those ingredients that make it feel luxury. The other thing is the appearance and packaging and presentation. So you might sell typical candles, but it could be that you use a nice looking jar and with certain types of packing materials and all these creatives and stamps and whatever, right? You can make your presentation feel luxury. And then the third is your pricing for luxury based off of your target audience, your target customer base. There is a customer base out there that will spend more for the same product just because it is luxury, just because they fit into that class of retail customer, that class of product, that class of consumer. So you can price for luxury, which will price most of the people out, but it will ironically price some customers in. So there's various ways you can attack this and define yourself as a luxury brand. That is another possibility for a niche in 2025. You can also design a candle brand or theme around nostalgic type fragrances. So what do I mean by that? That would be candles that smell like memories, candles that remind you of things when you were growing up. It could be fragrances that remind you of smells when you were growing up as a kid, or maybe at a previous career, or smells that remind you of the 50s, right? It's something that has nostalgic, something that has memory, something that basically reminds you of the past or reminds you of something else. And honestly, most candles do that to a degree on their own, but you can create and design an entire brand around that identity. Another expected trend for 2025, and this one kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting this one at all, but there is a trend expected in 2025 and so on for candy-like fragrances. So if that is something that appeals to you, that would be a great idea. Now, I personally don't love a lot of candy and gourmand type fragrances, but they are popular and a lot of people do like them. So you can either make candles that you love the smell of personally, or you can make candles around a theme that your customers would like, or both, which is what I'd recommend. I think you should enjoy what you're making as well, but there is a large group of people out there that really like these sweet, candy, gourmand, bakery type fragrances. Here at Black Tie Bar, and we sell a few. Our Peppermint Twist is undoubtedly, in my opinion, the best peppermint fragrance on the market. We sell a Cereal Dreams, which smells like Fruit Loops or Fruity Pebbles. We have a Twisted Pumpkin, which is a black licorice and anise mixed with pumpkin. There are so many fragrances out there that you can use to build a brand or identity around like candy-like fragrances. Bubblegum, Jolly Rancher Watermelon, there's so many. And then of course like spa or aromatherapy type candles. Those have really kind of been popular for the last few years, but they just continue to gain popularity. So I would definitely consider that if it's up your alley, if that interests you, to have some of those calming, relaxing aromatherapy spa-like scents, that's another great route. Anyways, that's just a few ideas. I'd encourage you to do some more research, find a good happy medium or balance between things that you think would be really popular for 2025 and so on, but also that pair well with your own interest. I think that's where you gotta get that win-win scenario. And also it's important when we're talking about a niche, I've used those terms interchangeably because no matter which one I use, someone always says, oh, you don't pronounce it that way. You don't say niche, you say niche, whatever. But another thing you should consider when you're picking your niche or your brand identity is to make sure you can tell a story with it. Make sure you can illustrate what your purpose is for your brand. What's behind it? What's the inspiration? What is your customer base? You need to be able to identify that. If someone were to walk up to you and ask you, who is your target customer? You should be able to tell them exactly who that target customer is and why. That will help you tell a story with your products, with your branding, with your social media posts, with your marketing, with your emails. Everything should feel connected. And that's the purpose between picking a theme or a niche or a target customer or a brand identity. It should all tell a story. It should all feel very connected. All right, now we're going to talk about legal setup and business structure. And this is not a topic that a lot of people want to talk about. It's often one that makes people a little nervous or scared or apprehensive about getting into business. But I can assure you, it's actually not that bad. You just need someone to help kind of guide you. And fortunately, other than resources like this, is you can go to your local business office and they'll give you a checklist of what you need. It's really not that difficult. What's important is to make sure you just do it from the get-go. The sooner you can get started on it, the better. And then staying on top of taxes. And you can have people help. Have a bookkeeper, have an accountant, have your local business office all help you with this. The harder part really, and where you're going to spend the most of your time, is going to be in the production side, the marketing, the sales, and all that, not the legal stuff. So you just want to get it taken care of and move on. So let's talk a little bit about that. Hopefully I make you feel a little bit more comfortable with this part of the process. So first I would think about what type of business structure do you want? And there's basically three that I think you should think about at this stage. One is a sole proprietorship. One is an LLC, and the other is a partnership, and that can come in a couple of varieties. Well, let's just simplify these real quickly. If you are brand new and you're not sure if this is something you're going to stick with yet, and you just kind of want to start slowly and build, then I'd probably just start as a sole proprietorship. And what that essentially means is that you're just doing business as yourself. And you can register what's called a DBA, which stands for doing business as, or it's also called a fictitious name. You register this with your state. It's $7, $12. It just depends on where you're at. It's very cheap and it allows you to use a different name other than your personal name, but you're still not a separate business entity. For example, if I was a sole proprietorship using Black Tie Barn, it would be Wade doing business as Black Tie Barn. That's what a DBA is. So I could still use the name Black Tie Barn, but I'm still working as an individual. What this means is you don't have a lot of protection. There's no real business structure here. And your taxes you just file your taxes like you would as an individual anyways. You just have separate income and expenses for your business, but it's all filed on the same tax return. So the benefit of this, super easy, super cheap. You don't have to do anything special. Now, in my personal opinion, the moment you think that this is something you want to stick with as a business and you have every intention of growing it and making sales and this is moved past a hobby, I would probably go ahead and do an LLC, which is a limited liability company. Now, there are a couple similarities to a sole proprietorship, but there are a couple stark differences as well, and I would call them advantages. So the first thing to know is that an LLC separates your personal assets from your business assets in theory. Now, there are always exceptions to rules. You still have to be careful. There is still some risk, but in general, it's a much safer approach because it is a separate business entity. It is a business structure. Now, as a single member LLC, in other words, if you're running your business by yourself, the taxes are very similar to a sole proprietorship because you will file what's called a Schedule C, which is just basically a report of your income and expenses for your business, your cost of goods and so on. And then that gets passed through to your personal individual income return and you file it together. You still file it as an individual tax return. There's no separate tax return for the business. So in that way, it's pretty similar. However, it's more professional. You're going to build better business reputation. So in other words, it adds some credibility. But again, it also protects some of your personal assets from your business assets in case you were to get sued or your business were to go under and so on. You could essentially close your business, whereas you're doing it as a sole proprietor and you're running business as yourself, your business never really closes. It never really ends because you were just doing it as yourself anyways. And then lastly is a partnership. Now, this is not going to apply to pretty much anyone starting out unless you're going into this with a partner. And as a partner, you've got a couple options. You can do this as a corporation, that's a partnership, or you can do this as a multi-member LLC. There's a few different ways to go about it. I would discuss with your bookkeeper or your CPA which one they would recommend. That's not something I can really do here on this channel. Nor am I an expert, and disclaimer, always get legal advice from a professional. This is me just explaining kind of high-level overview. The only suggestion I would have if you're considering a partnership is to make sure you have a clear outline of what your roles are individually and have your agreements in place. Because like any partnership, things can go wrong and you want to have a way to handle disputes and a way to separate peacefully if you ever need to. You just need to make sure everything is understood and clear in writing. All right, so after you have decided what type of structure you want, the next thing you need to do, and honestly, depending on which one you chose, you might need to do this next part first, but that's just get your permits and licenses. Now, to operate any kind of business, pretty much anywhere, there are certain licenses and permits you need to do so. There's no way for me to tell you what those licenses and permits are because you'll have to check with your local state and your city or county. It varies everywhere. The cost varies. The type of licenses and permits vary. You'll need to contact your local office to find out what you need. But it's very easy. They'll tell you exactly what you need. Most of the time, you will need at least a business license, which is a license giving you the right to do business. And then usually you'll also need a sales tax permit or sales tax license or a reseller's permit or a retail permit. It goes under several names. Basically, it's your license to collect sales tax and then remit the sales tax back in. Those are the two you almost always need. But again, check with your local. Check locally to find out exactly what you'll need in your area. The other thing you will want to do at a federal level is register your FEIN, which is your Federal Employee Identification Number. You'll need this number for several things. It establishes your business ID, sort of like your social security number for your business. You'll need that number to open up a business checking account, to really any kind of business financial loans, documents. Really anything that you're going to sign up using your business name, you'll need your EIN. And then one other thing that fall under permits and licensing, but it's label laws, following your label guidelines. Now, there are several ways to go about figuring out what these are. I have a video that I'll also try to remember to link where I talked about labeling laws and explain them, try to be a little bit more clear and what really needs to be involved on labeling and what really. It talks about labeling guidelines. It talks about safety and standards you should try to follow, whether they are required or not. And so I would encourage you to check out that video to get a deep dive. Long story short, there's certain information that's required to be on your product labels. So whether it's on your warning label or your actual candle product label. Usually that includes your net weight, which is the amount of product inside the jar. So for a candle, if you weigh an empty jar and let's say it weighs 1 pound, so for a candle, the way you figure out the net weight is just to subtract the container weight from the total weight once it's filled. So take an empty jar, weigh it, and let's say it weighs 8 ounces. And then you take a full candle that you've already filled, put that on the scale, and then you just subtract the difference. That's your net weight. You never want to put the total weight because that is a violation of the labeling requirements for selling a product like a candle. It needs to be the net weight. And then certain things have to be on the warning label as well. So again, just refer to that video. And I can't tell you exactly what goes on a warning label either because it very much depends on the type of product you're making. So just do a little bit of research. I just want you to make sure you're aware of this. So when you are designing your labels, you know to check and figure out what needs to go on them. You also will want to get insurance. Now, this is another topic that no one really likes to talk about. And it also scares a lot of people because they're like, why would I need insurance unless something bad is going to happen? Is insurance going to protect me if I burn a house down and so on, right? All right, now I could talk forever about why you should have insurance and you can refer to other videos or just do a lot of research, find out all the reasons you should get insurance. But let me just save you a bunch of time and tell you, get insurance. As a business, you need to have insurance anyways. At the very bare minimum, you need to have general liability insurance. But when you have a company that sells products, it's best to have product liability insurance as well. But insurance isn't just to help protect you from lawsuits or to save you money in case you were to get sued or cause damages. It also helps your business in case of loss of product or theft. Just a year and a half ago, I was on a trip and seriously? Just a year and a half ago, I was on a road trip for business, had a lot of gear in the vehicle, camera, equipment, and so on. And it was broken into and stolen. Almost everything in the whole van was stolen. And because of the insurance I had, I paid a $100 deductible and got reimbursed for everything. Very easy, very seamless. It took like a week. So there's multiple reasons to have insurance. So I would shop around, and here's my suggestion on how to go about finding insurance. I would always start locally first because it's easier and it's good to have a local relationship if you can. So find some local insurance companies, tell them what your business is, ask them if they can help, and make sure that they will cover candle making, your specific type of business. If not, then you can hop online and you could go to specific companies designed to create insurance policies for our industry. Indie Business Network is one example, and the HSGC, which is the Handcrafters Soap and Cosmetic Guild, I believe is the right one. Liberty Mutual and a few other popular insurance companies also, I think, are options. So you just need to kind of do your own research on those and just make sure that you're upfront about what you're doing, what your business is, and just get a policy. And a lot of people want to avoid that expense, and I understand it, but it's part of doing business. And to put it bluntly, if you're not willing to pay the cost of insurance, then you're not really ready to start a business. So do yourself a favor and just get an insurance policy the moment you realize you're going to start a business and you're going to start selling products. All right, let's talk about branding and packaging. Now, we've already talked about the importance of picking a theme or a niche or a brand identity, right? Well, now it's time to focus that presentation, that packaging around that theme, around that identity. Well, let's start with the essentials. And that would include choosing a memorable name so that it aligns with your niche or theme, but also one that you think just fits your overall goal, your overall vibe that you're going for. And now these days, there's so many businesses and brands out there that trying to pick a name that is so memorable that everyone will always remember yours and forget everyone else's is kind of not really a thing. But you can pick ones that are still easy, sound good together, short, things that are easy for people to type and search. Some of these names I come across are so difficult to spell that it's hard for people to even get to your website sometimes because it's just not an easy one to sell or it's very lengthy. So for example, when I chose Black Tie Barn, it just sounds good together. It's short, sweet, it's memorable, it's easy to spell, like it's not complicated at all. And it just sticks, right? So Black Tie Barn, it just rolls off the tongue nicely. So keep that in mind when you're picking a name. And part of me wants to say don't spend too much time on this because there's so many other things to worry about. But at the same time, don't skip over this quickly, because this is a pain to have to change this later and tell everyone you're changing your name. It's easier to get this right from the get-go. You can change it, yes, but it'll save you a lot more headache if you can just spend a little time on this right now. Next, you should design a logo for your name. And several ways to go about this. You can hire a professional, you're gonna spend more money, but you're probably gonna get better results, something a little bit more unique, something you can copyright or trademark. However, most people start with just a tool. Some people will use Canva just to design something basic. Now, most of those are hard to trademark because they're usually just kind of iterations. A lot of companies are using something very similar. Or you can hire like a cheap graphic designer from some of our groups that we're in, or you can go to a website like Fiverr, Fiverr, or Upwork and hire someone there. Freelancers is basically what they are. But you got to be careful. Do your research and check the reviews on those, because they're often just reusing other templates that they've made, sort of like Canva would. So just spend a lot of, spend some time on this and choose wisely. Go off of reviews and reputation. Now, I personally like to use a combination of everything we just talked about. For example, when I'm looking to work on a new logo or a new label idea or any kind of design, I go to like Canva or on pencil and paper and just kind of do a mock-up of like what I'm thinking, like what's in my head. What's a good way, baseline, like what's a good starting point? Then I will hire someone to say, look, here's what I'm thinking. Here's an idea. Run with it and give me a few different concepts and let's go from there. So you're using some pre-existing inspiration, but you end up with a totally unique design. That's the route I like to take. And then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part because we talked about it earlier, but make sure once you pick your name and your logo that you focus on that brand identity to tell a story and talk about the value, your mission, your inspiration behind your business and your brand. Make sure that's all there. Make sure it's all part of your brand. And when we're talking about packaging and presentation, try to be consistent everywhere, meaning use the same fonts, colors, tone for your website, social media, packaging. You want everything to feel like it's part of the same brand. If it's too disconnected, you're really hurting your own brand advertising there, right? Because it's too disconnected. I mentioned packaging a couple times now, and you might be wondering, like, why focus so much on packaging? Well, packaging, presentation, is perceived value. So it increases the perceived value of your product. There are brands out there are companies out there that sell the exact same product, basically, right? Like you got candle A, candle B. You've got soap A, soap B. You've got food A, food B. But because of the presentation and the packaging and how they deliver on their brand identity, one of them has a lot more perceived value. Even though the value is actually the same, perception's everything. That's how you get people to spend more for your products, but also how you keep customers coming back. Brand loyalty, right? We talked about that earlier. You want high customer retention. You want customers coming back, right? So add some additional perceived value. Now there's several ways to go about doing that. Presentation and packaging is just one of them. Great performance of your product is another one. Even things like loyalty and rewards programs is a way to add not just actual value to your customer, but additional perceived value. In their mind, if I can get two products that are the same, but I get more perks with this one, I get better presentation with this one, then I'm gonna go that route, right? So that's perceived value. Extra, ribbons, bows, nicer packaging, nicer boxes, nicer, all of that adds to that perceived value. It feels like it has more value than the other one. And that's the whole idea behind that. Another common tactic for this, especially on like Etsy shops, is handwritten notes and cards because it adds that personalized touch. Personal touch is perceived value. All right, we've been talking about your products. We're talking about presentation, but now let's talk about how to market those products a little better. In short, you need a marketing plan, a marketing strategy. Now, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time going into the nitty-gritty details of this because I'm not an expert on marketing. You would want to go to a marketing or advertising specialist for more expertise. But I can highlight the overall things that you should be considering when you're thinking about marketing. First, let's talk about building your online presence. I would say these days it's better to focus on video content. Now, that doesn't mean you need to start a YouTube channel. What I mean is on your product pages, do little short video clips, not just a still shot of your photo. Show your candle on a platter that kind of rotates, or show someone picking up and smelling your candle. Do some zooming effects that show like your candle in a lifestyle situation. You need some visual movement, as that works a lot better these days than just still shots. Now, I don't get rid of the still photos. You want a combination of both. But also, yes, some short form video content is another great way to promote your products. YouTube is not a great platform to promote like your candles, because no one wants to watch a 20-minute video just you talking about your candles. But if you can do a 20, 30 second, 1 minute video on TikTok or Instagram Reels showing you, quickly talking about your fragrance or your scent or your candle, showing some user-generated content of customers picking up your candle and lighting it and then smelling it as they walk through the living room, things like that. That type of content does work, and video content in particular works even better than it used to. Now, you also just heard me mention user-generated content. That's another one. So encourage your customers to upload or send you little videos of them unboxing their order, especially if your presentation's on point, right? Show them lighting the candle, show them using it in their house. Have their customers even leave little 20-second reviews for you. And you can use that content with permission, of course, on your website or on your Instagram or TikTok and Facebook page. One that I'm not fantastic at, but is important, I think, is consistency when it comes to social media marketing. You don't want to go so long that people forget you're there. You don't want to go so often that you're annoying people. But having some consistency, I think, does matter when it comes to social media content. Post daily, at least a couple times a week, and I think that's a pretty good starting point. And then also engage that audience, engage that customer base. Asking for comments or doing polls or Q&As with your customer base, with your community. All right, so another monster of a topic to cover is your website setup and SEO, search engine optimization. Again, way too big of a topic to go into the deep details on this video. I talk a little bit about it on the channel and other videos. And again, use your research, YouTube, Google, and just learn a little bit about this. And my advice would be to start on Shopify or Etsy or both. And you can go to both those platforms and they have videos and content to help you get started and teach you these things as well. So the Shopify YouTube channel is a great example. But in general, let me give you a few tips. First is to create a simple, clean website. You don't want this too distracting, too cluttered. You don't want it to be require too many clicks for a user to find what they're looking for. It should be visually appealing, but also simple, plenty of white space or dark space. Basically, you don't want the background cluttered. You want plenty of negative space. And that makes it easier to shop. It's a more pleasurable experience. My personal advice, you can use Squarespace, you can use Wicks, you can use Shopify. For an actual website, I would strongly recommend Shopify over all the others. And there are so many reasons why, but there's a reason that majority of websites are hosted on Shopify these days. They have great customer service. They have a great platform. It's easy to set up out of the box, and then you can add more and more to it with plugins, theme customizations. There are a lot of things you can do with it, but it's so powerful and it connects with literally everything. Anything you might need down the road, it's going to connect with and integrate with. But honestly, my personal opinion, I would just recommend you save time and just go straight to Shopify. And honestly, the majority of people recommend the same. As far as SEO goes, search engine optimization, what that essentially means is you want Google to recommend your website and your products to others when they're shopping, especially if they're doing the searches. So if someone goes on and searches lilac candle, what will it take for your candle, your business to show up on the search page? Well, to be perfectly honest, to be blunt, you're probably not going to anytime soon. There's a lot of competition out there. There are big brands, businesses that have been around forever, and trying to compete with them on SEO when they've been established for a very long time is near impossible. There are a few ways to do it. Paying for Google ads, things like that will bump you to the top somewhat. But really strong keywords, descriptions, and then honestly, just give it time. That will help boost your SEO so that you have a better chance in the future of showing up in search results. However, all that being said, this is why I strongly encouraged earlier to pick a theme or a niche, whatever, because it's so much easier to stand out and you have less competition. If I make candles designed around a very specific theme, if I make a candle line based around Greek gods and mythology or whatever, it's so much easier for my business and products to show up in search results because I'm not competing with Bath & Body Works. I'm not competing with Target and Walmart and Nest and like every other major candle brand out there, right? So again, this is why I harped on this so much earlier. I think picking that specific niche or theme is so helpful, not just for your customers, but also for you. It's so much easier to promote your business. All right, let's talk about email marketing and possibly even SMS marketing. Although if you're new, I would wait to add that later. Email marketing. Everyone thinks that email marketing is just like a useless tool these days because everyone gets so many emails. But that's why you need to, because everyone else is using email marketing. Don't be the one that's not. It's affordable, it's easy. There are services like ConvertKit and MailChimp and Klaviyo, and all of these do email marketing for you. They're very easy. They give you templates, you edit to fit your brand and add whatever content you want, you send it out to your email list. The sooner you get started on collecting emails, which you can do through your social media platforms. You can do that through local events where you have customers walk them and put in their email, and if they leave their email, they get 10% off their order. However you want to collect emails, there's tons of options, but the sooner you do that, the better. And that email you have forever, unless the customer stops using it, of course, and then you send them, maybe bi-weekly or even once a month newsletter to keep them fresh in mind. Right? You're always aware. You stay relevant in their minds. And anytime you're going to release new products or run promotions or sales, many of you are signed up for my email marketing, right? So you get my occasional once a week, every couple weeks emails talking about candle news or our new products or when we run big sales. And then there's a few of you that miss the sale and then you're bummed and wonder why you missed it. Get on the email newsletter and you can see from a business standpoint why that's so powerful. You stay relevant in the minds of your customers. Now, SMS is another avenue. We use SMS as well, but it's not something I would start with. I would make sure and build things up first because SMS marketing is more expensive. Even the base platform cost is, and I think it's more powerful once you have an established business. So I would wait on that one, but I would start email marketing basically as soon as you can. Talked about a couple of platforms for selling. The two that I would recommend that I think I mentioned are Shopify and Etsy. Now, two different types of platforms. Shopify is a website, and Shopify would be starting your own website. Etsy is selling your products on a marketplace along with other sellers. You probably know the difference between the two, and there's a lot of videos out there talking about the pros and cons of each. The Shopify option is a better kind of permanent option, allows you to grow larger and a lot more flexibility, more customization, generally, I guess, more professional in a way, and allows you to have full control over your brand identity. Whereas Etsy, you don't have much control over the look and feel of your shop. You can upload a few banners and images and things like that, but you don't get to design the whole website because you're sharing the space with so many other sellers. It's sort of like being on Amazon, right? Well, the benefit of Etsy, though, however, is it's so much easier to get started. You can start your shop in less than a day and be up and rolling, whereas Shopify is going to take longer. You got to build it out, design your themes, add your products, all that kind of stuff. And so there's more upfront work. And so what a lot of people do is do both. Now, you can do both perpetually if you want and just keep running two different places for customers to shop for your products. Or a lot of people will start with Etsy, get your products up, start making any sales at all. It's better than nothing. You get a feel for how to handle customer service. You get a better comfort level with shipping products. And while your Etsy shop is running, you're working on building your website through Shopify. And that's what I would recommend. And if you decide you want to keep both later, cool. If not, then once your website's ready to go and you start letting customers know to go over there, then you can kind of phase Etsy out and move to Shopify. Or like I said, just keep doing both. Now on Etsy, it's important to optimize your keywords, both in your title and your description, just like you would with the website, honestly. So if you're selling, for example, lavender handmade soy candles, make sure in your description and probably title, you have lavender, handmade, and soy candle all in there. That's what's gonna help your SEO. Now, and when it comes to the description, it's better not to just kind of fill it with these random keywords, but create like a nice overall sentence, a compelling description that just includes these keywords. So it looks nice, it reads well, but still includes those powerful keywords. And then on Etsy, it's very, very, very important to have high quality photos and little video content if you can. More so on Etsy, I think, than anywhere because it's so much easier to blend in with everyone else because you don't have control over the design of the website. So you have to make sure your products and your images stand out. You have an option with Etsy to run Etsy ads. I'm not an expert on ads. What I can tell you is they can be extremely beneficial if you use them the right way. If you don't know how to run ads, I would not start with them. Once you get your shop going and you've kind of got a comfort level for everything else, then maybe reach out to have someone help you with ads. A lot of people think that the purpose of ads is I'm going to spend more money to get more of my products in front of customers, and that'll lead to more sales. So more ad spend equals more revenue. Well, yeah, that's the ultimate goal, but it's not the only purpose of running ads. Running ads also teaches you about what your customers are looking for. It teaches you about which of your products are performing best. And so you can run ads on like 5 or 6 different products. You figure out which ones are doing better. You can tweak the ads, or you can stop spending ad money on others and focus them on where it's really, really working, and you double down, and that can lead to more and more revenue. So ads are not just revenue generating tools, they're also insight tools, and they help you, well, in the long run, earn even more revenue. And also encourage your customers to leave feedback and reviews. That increases your credibility, that increases trust, and that will also lead to more revenue. In fact, it's the free way to do it as opposed to ads. And then on Etsy, it's important to run some type of incentive. Etsy really likes to promote companies that have free shipping on their orders. So find a way to build in some of your shipping costs into your products, and then have promotions like free shipping or other promotions as part of your strategy. Now let's talk a little bit about some tips for selling on Shopify. Well, for Shopify, I would start with and we talked about this earlier, a very clean, user-friendly store. Shopify offers a bunch of free themes that you can get started with. Now, ultimately, down the road, you probably are better off choosing a paid theme, and you can get them anywhere from, $50 up to a few, several $100s. And these paid themes offer more functionality and more like features and cool things you can do. But you don't need it to get started. You can pick a good theme like Dawn or Minimal as a way to start, and they're free themes and they work really well. And then you can tweak those themes to fit your brand. You can change the colors, you can change a little bit of the layout. All the themes have different parts you can customize. And so you just have to, once you pick a theme, you can see what you can do. But make sure you pick a theme that fits the look you're going for, but also the type of business you're selling. And so if you're a product-based business, like most of you here are, you're gonna wanna pick a theme that is best suited for e-commerce, for selling products, versus some themes just show like your photography portfolio. Well, that's not as good for converting and selling products, right? So pick a theme that makes sense for your business. I would also make sure you optimize your product pages. Now, the product page, meaning the specific page for like one of your candles, and every product has its own product page. You want to make sure you optimize those and really put as much as you can into that page over all the others, because that's where you're going to sell your customers on a particular product. You want great quality photos, maybe a little video content, show a snippet of reviews, use a couple review plugins or apps so you can see customer feedback on those product pages. It's going to have your pricing. It's going to have good detailed descriptions. It's going to have as much information about the product that you can provide to your customers. Now, a lot of these themes will have these sections on the side that you can expand as people want to see more. They just click on it, expand it. So it's not just flooding them with information, right? They can choose to see more. One of the best things you can do too on a product page is other related or similar products. And that's a good way to increase your average order value. So if someone likes a lavender candle, then you might also recommend a lavender wax melt, for example. Another thing on Shopify that you should use is recovering abandoned carts. Now, there are several plugins that do this for you, but Shopify also has a built-in one that you don't have to use a separate plugin for. And that will basically, if a customer visits your website, adds things to cart, and then never checks out, they either forget about it, or maybe they've changed their mind, or they're unsure and they leave it sitting, Shopify can automatically send them email to recover their cart. In other words, like, hey, reminder, you've got such and such in your cart. Would you like to go ahead and proceed with checkout? I would definitely go that route. Like, abandoned cart recovery is a tremendous revenue generator, so don't skip out on that. And then one other thing I would do on Shopify is have a kind of like a blog or a wiki or an article section on your website. And Shopify has this built in as an option. And this is a place where you can talk, just write articles or write little blog posts about your products and the type of materials you use, or tell a little bit about yourself or about your story, and post occasional updates. It's just a great way to add extra engagement, and it also helps with your SEO. It makes your website a little bit more searchable and engaging in Google search results. All right, now real briefly, I want to talk about scaling your business. The first question you might have is, how do I know when to expand? Well, there's 3 primary signs that tell you that your business is ready to expand: consistent sales, high demand, and repeat customers. If you have all 3 of those, or even just 2 of the 3 of those, that's a good indication that your business is scaling or should be scaling. Now you might be wondering, well, what does that mean? What does scaling my business mean? Well, that can mean all sorts of things. If you're a rapidly growing business, that might be scaling your location. Now, what that usually means is scaling your products first. However, that doesn't necessarily mean more product variety or product mix. It could just mean more of your current products, particularly if those products are so popular. You don't want to run out of those. You want to be able to scale your business so you can more efficiently and effectively keep producing those products, because you've already got such a high demand. You've already got repeat customers. However, if you're getting consistent sales and repeat customers, this is a good opportunity to try to sell those repeat customers something else. So maybe you add a few more scents, a few more lines to your, so maybe you add a few more scents or a few more options to your current candle line. You also have an opportunity to add more products that are related. If you're already selling candles, sell wax melts. If you're selling wax melts in candles, maybe sell reed diffusers or room sprays. These are very, very easy products to make. Candles are actually the hardest. These other ones are easier to add on, and they're good upsell products. If someone likes your scent so much and they're already purchasing your products for home, these other products go really well and they're paired really well. In fact, you can make these as bundles and sets to sell on your website as well. In fact, if you're curious more on selling other products along with your main staple product, check out my most recent video. I'll also link that in the description below. It's a whole video dedicated to not just selling candles and how to scale your business with other products as well. And then there's another way to scale too. It's not just with products, but it's with your reach. What other new customer bases can you reach? And that's where wholesale and retail partnerships come in. So if you've been selling just direct yourself, direct to consumer, direct to customer on your own website, consider expanding to wholesale if you haven't already. Start with local shops. Swing by your local shops, drop them off what I call a wholesale kit. This is a couple samples of your products, a rate sheet or a laminated sheet of your other products and some prices, and sell wholesale to those stores so they can sell for you. And that's another way to scale your business as well. Okay, I'm going to now move into some additional tips that I think are very important to talk about. They don't necessarily fall into a specific category. So one of the things that I always talk about is the importance of starting small and keeping things simple. It's very easy to get overwhelmed in any kind of business, not just candle making, but as a new business owner or a new hobbyist, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed and get kind of back on your heels. So starting very slow and keeping things simple will really help you navigate through this till you get more comfortable. Crawl before you walk, dip your toes in before you swim, right? Starting small gives you room to test, learn, and grow without feeling overwhelmed or like you're going to fail. So when it comes to testing, for example, I would test with just a few scents. Pick 3 scents, no more than 4 or 5, and make sure you get comfortable with the testing process and candle making in general before you expand, before you overcommit yourself to too many scents and too many things going on, and you're wasting time, product, money. Just keep it simple. Start with a few and get comfortable. Better to create 3 high quality candles than 10 mediocre ones. So if you keep that in mind too, it's not just about keeping things from being overwhelming. It also can help you make better quality products at the beginning. Success doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes perseverance. It takes consistency and learning, and taking things slow, one step at a time, keep it simple will help you get there. Now, the other thing that's hard to do sometimes is staying motivated and also motivated to keep learning. Mistakes are part of the process. Every single issue you fix makes your candles better, it makes you a candle maker, it makes your business better. Mistakes lead to improvements. Failures lead to successes. And so it's totally okay. In fact, it's going to happen, and the sooner you embrace it, the better. It's okay to make mistakes. It's better to focus on progress than it is perfection. The more you learn, the better you'll get, and the better your products will be. If you're not already part of the online candle communities, I'll have my Facebook group linked in the description below. There's actually two of them. They're great communities to help you build up your candle making skills, but also inspiration, motivation, and work with the community. It kind of helps each other out. And of course, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already as well, because that's the entire purpose of this channel. By the way, if you haven't already liked this video and you are enjoying it, give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. All right, so now let me give you 4 action steps to take right now. The first is to connect with us. Now, I just talked about that. I provide education. We also provide announcements. We provide promotions and things to help you as a candle maker and as a candle business, not just with education, but ways to save money, products to try, things that we think would be helpful and valuable to you. Facebook page, join the groups I just talked about, subscribe to this channel, stay involved in the community, and we can all help each other out. Also, if you haven't already, if you go to the website, and scroll to the bottom, you can sign up for those email newsletters we talked about earlier, or I'll link it in the description of this video as well, because that is one of the best ways to get those new announcements of things, right? And so staying involved, staying engaged is the first step that I would recommend if you're brand new, because we release a lot of good content here and other platforms, and I want to be able to continue to help you out past this video. Number 2, write down some of the ideas that you have for your niche or your theme. We spent a lot of this video talking about that, so the next step would be start making a list of ideas. You don't have to pick one yet. There's no right or wrong. You're brainstorming. Now, once you've done that, try to narrow it down and select one. You can change it later. You can roll out a whole new candle line later, but pick one to start and then start listing steps to achieve that or things you need to do that support that theme, support that niche. And so think of ideas that relate to that theme, that brand. That will come in handy later as you start developing your scents and your labels and your website. Third is to start experimenting a little bit with the candle making if you haven't already. That means test with small batches of wax and fragrance oils, wicks, and jars. You can buy candle kits that many suppliers sell. We don't sell one yet, but everyone's been asking me to do so. If that interests you, let me know in the comments below. If I get enough interest in that, that's something we'll start doing. Regardless, it's time to start getting your feet wet with the candle making itself. So don't overcommit here. Don't over purchase. Buy a couple samples of wax. You can go to a local store to pick up some mason jars or canning jars. Purchase some fragrance oils to sample and some wicks. We have a great selection of Black Tie Barn. If you're not sure, reach out to support at Black Tie Barn, and we'll give you some great places to start. You can leave some comments here and we'll help you out. But long story short, you're going to pick out some wicks and some oils and some wax, and you're going to start experimenting. Get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, and see if this is something you enjoy doing, and start getting some experience under your belt. The sooner you can do that, the better. And then fourth is set a launch goal, right, for your first product. So you're not going to have to necessarily establish a full business yet. You don't have to you don't have to overwhelm yourself. You don't have to say like, oh, I'm releasing my entire business here in 3 months. No, pick a target goal for when you'd like to have your first official product, your first main candle that you'd say, I'm comfortable enough giving this to someone else or selling this if I had a business. Once you hit that goal, everything really starts going in motion. So that should be your first objective. Now, after these 4 steps, you're going to follow the rest of this plan and the rest of the other video that I talked about with the timeline to give yourself these like bigger goals and milestone objectives to hit along the way. And that'll help kind of turn this hobby into a business and really start to scale things for you. But you've got to start somewhere, and you can't make 50 products without first making 1. All right. So what I'd like you to do for me is in the description of this video, please comment what your biggest takeaway is from this video and any other questions you might have as well, of course. Also, remember, for all of you interested in Craftsy, the first 1,000 of you to click on the link for Craftsy in the description box below will get a premium membership to Craftsy for an entire year for only $1.49. Definitely check it out. If you're ready to take action, I'll be here. My business will be here. All of our content will be here to help you every step of the way. As a reminder, last year I released a similar video that was more of in a roadmap timeline format. You can watch this next, and that will help you kind of put all this in action. Like, what should I do at what point? So definitely check out that video next. If you've already seen it, it's a good refresher. And if you don't need a refresher, then watch this other video here. All that being said, I appreciate all of you for being here and sticking around for this pretty long video. Again, leave your comments and questions in the description below, and hopefully I'll see you in the other platforms as well. Thanks.